Welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Devani Alderson. We're your co-hosts on this journey of creativity and productivity.
I Create Daily is for artists in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. I Create Daily is a movement for creators serious about your art.
If you're into creating anything, this podcast is definitely for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Devani.
And I'm Leora.
And on this coffee break, we're going to talk about motivation.
So this phrase in an article leapt out at me. The phrase was finding motivation. I nodded my head and thought, yeah, that's a worthy pursuit. Mm-hmm. But then, wait a minute. Do we really find motivation? Or do we create it? So Devani and I thought it would be a good thing to discuss, because when we're working with daily creating and motivation to achieve our goals and to essentially be accountable to ourselves every day in all that we do, motivation definitely plays a role. And sometimes it wanes, and sometimes it's very vigorous, and it's easy just to jump into, the mindset, get the right mindset right, and get going. So where does your motivation come from? Do you think it comes more from the inside? Is it something from the outside? Or is it something that you go, like if you're not feeling motivated, you go and find something online to make you motivated?
That's a really interesting question, because the more I think about it, the more unsure exactly I am if there's like a definitive answer to where it comes from. I think, because it's interesting too, because you almost have to also be motivated to seek out motivation.
Exactly.
Which is like this weird dilemma suddenly, because I never really thought about that before. I was just sort of like, I'm motivated or I'm not. And then when I'm unmotivated, I go find the thing. But then like you have to be motivated to find something that's motivated.
Well, it's funny you say it, because we haven't talked about this yet. In fact, we just said, okay, well, we'll see. We have a conversation.
No, we're unscripted here completely.
Worth sharing, which we typically are unscripted, but the difference is we didn't even talk about it before at all. Yeah. So we thought we would see where, but the reason I thought it would be a worthwhile topic is because that exact same thought came to me, was that, wait a minute, to find motivation, you have to be motivated enough to even look for it. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. It's like the positive motivating videos and things that are out there that we tend to seek. We are seeking them, or we're interested. Like when they flash through our YouTube channel or our screen, we are tuned into them. And so therefore we notice them. So it really does seem that there's an intrinsic value or intrinsic factor to motivation, intrinsic motivation even, that compels us and attracts that to us. According to the law of attraction thing, we tend to draw back to us what we put out there. And it certainly makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's like a universal law, whether it's a physics or whether it's a religious law of cause and effect, karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. Yeah. It is what we put out there comes back to us kind of thing. It makes sense that when it is that we get into the mode of seeking motivation or being motivated, then that's what we seek more of, and that's what we find more of. And same thing with the opposite, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also a lot like finding help or seeking help. The help comes from an external place, but you have to actually want help first.
That's right. Right.
And you have to be in this mindset of, I'm struggling and that's okay, and I'm going to have somebody else or something else help me.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of similar with motivation, because I know when, like, if I'm in a bad mood, like when I actually need motivation and I'm not in a good mood to receive it, suddenly those quotes, those videos, they all become obnoxiously annoying. Yeah. And like those voices of like, you can do it, and blah, 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 and all of it. And I'm just like, me, no way. That's literally my mind sounds like. And so it's like, I'm not in the mood for it. I'm not in, and So, yeah.
You want to enjoy your state of foul,
Right, yeah, yeah.
Well,
it reminds me of like a fly that buzzes around in your head. The obnoxious fly, and everything suddenly takes on this tinny quality of me.
Yeah, and you feel, but sort of like, so when you get into those funks, like, is it consciously going through your mind that I want to stay here for a while?
No, very rarely. No, I think I've done it a couple times out of spite of somebody else mentioning getting out of a funk. And I'd just be like, oh, well, we can play the waiting game and see who stays negative longest. But that's not generally something I consciously think about. It's more just like, I'm in a funk. Nobody bother me.
Well, okay. So as you're talking, because I'm thinking, well, if we know when we find ourselves in a funk, and regardless of how we got there, it doesn't matter. If we tend to be overall positive people, we know we don't want to stay there.
Yeah.
And we know that that's not how we live, and we want to find our way back to our normal sense of, sort of
harmony.
Exactly, harmony and personal balance, just back to our core of who we are. And that is definitely not who we are. We all have our moments, right? So
I think the bounce back rate is higher when you're constantly surrounded with motivation. Like when you get into those funks, generally it's a lot easier because it feels bad. Because it feels bad feeling bad.
Yeah. So, but as you were talking, it's sort of like, I was thinking, why would we not seek something out? When we're in that funk and we feel that they're there, why would we not seek out something that we know can bring us out of it? And then it occurred to me, part of the answer is essentially the same as it is for fitness and the gym. If someone is overweight and needs to get healthier, needs to be fitter, etc., then they know what to do.
Right.
We know what to do when we need to get our body fitter, and we know that it will work. Exercise, more exercise, eat better, eat less.
Yeah.
Or eat the right kind of foods. And yet knowing and doing are two different things, right? Because to implement it is harder.
So, I still don't munch on kale chips.
Yeah. Well,
and I know it would be good for me.
They're actually delicious, but if I'm going to have like the junk food, then, it's like, it's not something I would crave to spend the calories on, but that's a whole other episode. They're actually quite amazing. They're delicious. It's just that I don't tend to munch like that on those kinds of things.
And we're overall healthy. So when we do decide to binge.
And you don't mean, excuse me to interrupt, remember where you were. What you meant, you don't mean to say we're over all healthy stuff. You mean we're overall
in our lifestyle, in our diet and lifestyle. Yeah. It's a generally healthy lifestyle.
Right.
Like we're eating a lot of salads, we're eating a lot of greens, we're doing the juices and all that fun stuff. But sometimes you don't want someone to tell you kill chips when you want nachos.
Right.
Like there are those moments. And so I think that's kind of what some of these dips are. Like when you're feeling bad, sometimes it's just like, well, I've been so positive all week. Just give me my 5 minutes to feel terrible, okay? Like it's like a reset or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and so I don't get there very often, but I do. I have often enough, of course, to know and relate. I think as I aged, I go there less often.
Yeah.
Just because my natural state is just really happy and positive about life.
And the older grateful. You get, the more you appreciate just the time, how valuable time is. Yeah. Like when you're in your 20s, like me, you're like, I'm immortal. So,
right. Well, and how tiny the little petty things that can bother us throughout each day really are.
For sure.
So it's like, do I really want my day to be derailed by this little thing? And I love what Hal Elrod said in his interview with Ryan Moran on Freedom Fastlane, which we mentioned recently in another episode. And he talks about the 5-minute rule, where no matter what happens, and for him, there were horrific things that happened, from like a barely surviving car accident kind of event to cancer, that like a rare kind of cancer. So literally life-threatening things. Yeah. And yet he still gave himself his 5 minutes approximately of grief, of anger, of frustration and whatever. And really it makes so much sense, because the thing that, again, I think with age, it's gotten a lot easier for me, that it just, if there's nothing we can do about it, there's no sense in wasting our time on it. And so then for me, it's like when to see motivating things out there, and to have that kind of state of mind, I definitely seek them out. And where that ties in, I think, for networks and communities, and, you know, you're the average of the 5 people kind of concept, is seek out what you want to be more like, seek out the state of mind you want to have more often, and that is what you'll see. You know, it's the common thing, like finding motivation, which is our initial topic, is, again, it's a lot like, let's say that you bought a Volkswagen, or were thinking about buying something more common like a Jeep. You're thinking about buying a Jeep, and suddenly you see Jeeps everywhere. And yet there are not suddenly more Jeeps in the universe than ever before. It's only that we're tuned in. So we're tuned, because we're tuned in, we're noticing. And so that's an interesting concept from the standpoint of the law of attraction. Energy travels through our universe in waves. And when it is that we set something in motion, like a desire, an interest, or a thought form, you know, a meme that we have this floating around in our own personal aura, you know, then that's a frequency. And we vibrate to people and things at that frequency, which is why we tend to attract those things in our life. I'll need to verify this. I've been told and heard over the years that if you have tuning forks in a room, that they'll begin to vibrate at the same frequency if one goes off. But I don't know if that's true.
Makes sense.
It kind of makes sense, but I'm not sure if it's entirely true, because then how would each different tuning fork maintain its frequency? So I'm not sure if that's true. But certainly what I do know is true, whether it's through meditation or certain music or activities, that certain things and certain activities get your brain waves in sync. And one of the traits of a really deep and good meditation is that if normally our brain waves on their different, sort of like looking at analytics charts, and you have some that are in waves and some that are in peaks, and they're like, when one's up, the other's down, that kind of thing. Whereas in meditation, they tend to roll into a rise and a dip together, so that the different frequencies and areas of our brain tend to be essentially dancing together, you know, that they're on literally the same wavelength frequency. So, which means that we get into sort of a state of, I don't want to use the word equilibrium, but for lack of a better word at the moment, because
harmony.
Harmony is probably better, because equilibrium seems to mean like we're kind of staying still, not moving, other than we're at a core, a centeredness, which, you know, again, you're thinking about meditation and the concept of left brain, right brain, east and west. Long-term meditators recognize that there's a state in the eye of the storm, so to speak, that is the center, which in Eastern religion is called the Shushmana, or what in yoga would be the Kundalini, the core center where our chakras reside, where the breath rises up and down through that core of who we are. It parallels our lungs, it parallels our spine, and that is our core. And when you think about it, when we're in a good state of mind, our posture tends to be better.
We're confident.
You know, exactly. When we're confident, our posture's better.
Also, I notice when you're already personally motivated or in a good mood, it's so much easier to find things that wouldn't necessarily be categorized as motivating. So like for me, like the big thing I'm on right now is like figuring out these Facebook ads. And so when I'm in a funk, like everything is a problem, from the platform to the various buttons I should be pressing, to why is this not working, to like the creatives suck and nobody's going to like this and everybody's going to hate this and this ad isn't going to work and Facebook is stupid and I hate this, you know? But when I'm in a motivated mood, it's more just like, oh my gosh, these analytics are cool. I wonder what this will do. I wonder if I try this different word, if people will, you know, like it better, or if I try this other graphic, or, hey, I wonder what this button does, or, you know? And so it's sort of like, and that's, nobody would necessarily be like, oh, Facebook ads, that's so motivating. But because I'm already in a balanced place, I can look at it as, oh, this is really interesting. I wonder what I can do to make this work better.
Yeah, definitely. So along the lines of finding or creating motivation, in a way, you could say they're a little bit the same thing then, aren't they? Because if we're seeking motivation, then it's because we are generating within us the desire to seek it, which is in and of itself a spark of motivation. So when you're in those funks, then what advice would you give yourself, or to a friend who is coming to you with the same complaint that, I just can't get started, or I wake up grouchy, or whatever it may be? And, what advice would you give that person when they're in that space to help them get out of it more quickly?
Well, what I tell myself, and it doesn't always, I've heard some people say that it doesn't work for them the same way, but what I tell myself is there's somebody who doesn't even have a house in the world. There's somebody who doesn't even have fresh water in the world. There's somebody in the world who literally is fighting for survival or just clean air to breathe. And meanwhile, I'm literally here complaining because some buttons don't work on a computer, and I have Wi-Fi and a roof over my head and hot coffee. Yeah. And generally, I can just talk myself out of it. And as harsh as it sounds, I'd probably do that to a friend too. I'd probably be like, well, you have a roof over your head, you have a hot drink, you have a laptop. Do you know how many people don't even have their own computer? Mm-hmm. And maybe that sounds harsh, but it's sort of just putting things in perspective.
And also, what you're doing in those moments by saying some people don't, you're also appreciating what it is that you do have. Mm-hmm. So you've turned it to gratitude, essentially. So when it is, and that's definitely, proven, you cannot be in your grateful area of your brain at the same time that you're in your negative, critical area of your brain. So.
I've tried it one time. Okay. So I like to argue with advice in my head sometimes and be like, oh, really? I can't? Watch me. But I tried it one time and I cracked myself up so much in my head trying to be angry and grateful at the same time that I ended up making my mood better.
I was like, I'm not going to be grateful.
I'm not going to be grateful. And I'm grateful for trying out this experiment. And then it was just like, no, you can't do it.
It doesn't work. That's right. That's right. All right. Well, I think that we kind of agreed on this one, that positive motivation can be found if it is first intrinsic within and comes from within. And
we'd love to hear your thoughts about that. Definitely. Do you find it? Do you create it? Do you do a little bit of both? Are you an enigma?
Yeah.
We want to hear it all.
That's right. Definitely. Okay. That's a wrap for now.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.